All right, everyone. We have some real news from the alternative media and YouTube, or what used to be called the alternative media. So, before I continue, please hit like and subscribe if you're not subscribed yet. And all of the channel links will be in the comments later. So, Cenk Uygur and the Young Turks have lost a very important part of their puzzle, which is piece of their puzzle, Jimmy Dore. And if you watch my channel, you'll probably notice that I've critiqued Jimmy Dore on a number of videos. Very heavy criticism, especially on his international uh, coverage, specifically what's been going on with Venezuela. But in general, if you'd ask me, I'd say Jimmy Dore's channel is one of the more interesting and creative. And I think it's, I don't care what part of the spectrum you're on. Jimmy Dore is a great self promoter. He knows how to appreciate his audience. He goes and does these live appearances, and he does live YouTube chats and stuff like that. And generally, I would say the way that he does it is very interactive. So people have a feel that they are part of his channel and whatever it is that he's doing. And it might be that some of that model is derived from the Young Turks. I'm not quite sure because I'm not what you would call a huge consumer of the Young Turks brand. Really, the only reason that I even see anything from the Young Turks is because I happen to watch the Hard Bastard channel. So, once in a while I'll hear something from another YouTuber about what the Young Turks are doing, but I don't really watch their own channel because, it really isn't what I'm looking for. But Jimmy Dore, I would say, is one of the less. He polarizes sometimes because his ideas are very opinionated. He's not somebody who is, going to take the middle of the road way on anything. So, he's bound to piss somebody off, and I don't think he really cares, which is fine. So, why is this important? Well, Jimmy Dore has, I believe, over 500,000 subscribers now, and many of those people would now present a direct competitor for the Young Turks. The Young Turks, I think, is over 4 million subscribers, and they're rapidly being, the growth of the Young Turks has become slower than some of the other rivals, especially the conservative rivals. For example, Steven Crowder's channel is growing at an amazing pace at the moment, and it's only going to continue to grow faster because it happens to be that Steven Crowder's channel is more targeted by the censors than is the Young Turks and Cenk Uygur. But you have this statement from Cenk Uygur, which says, I had plenty of disagreements with Jimmy Dore in the last year, but I always believed in him and still do. He left the Young Turks network today, but he did it with incredible grace. I was proud to have him with us and be an independent voice checking us as he does with all media. So, a lot of, I don't like Cenk Uygur at all. I think this was a classy statement on his part, and it was the right way to, part ways with Jimmy Dore. And apparently Jimmy Dore appreciated it because he tweeted out, it was my pleasure, thanks for the mention, on another tweet that Cenk Uygur said about how he helped the Justice Democrats. But I would say that, look, a lot of people who create stuff on YouTube, we are looking for ways to, of course, score points on people we disagree with or score points on people that we happen to have personal beefs with. I think it shows a degree of maturity that these guys didn't get into some massive verbal argument. But who's to say that it'll last? I think below the surface there's probably, some tension between Jimmy Dore and Cenk Uygur. You have to remember when Dave Rubin left the network, the Young Turks, several years ago. There probably wasn't bad blood at the time. I think that Rubin was looking more for kind of a place where he wasn't as he was looking to go towards the center, and this is a different case. Jimmy Dore is looking to go further to the left, and I think there's that's not as simple of a proposition as it used to be. There are places that are far to the left that seem to be able to see the truth more clearly than people that are, like Cenk Uygur, who I would say is basically a corporate leftist at this point. Cenk Uygur claims that he's the alternative media, but he does accept money from Wall Street investors, or if not Wall Street, then venture capitalists like the Jeffrey Katzenberg. So I would say that Jimmy Dore, yes, he's leaving in order to move to the left, but but he's definitely got less, strings attached to him now, and that's how he can grow a little faster. And long term, I think that this could lead to a broader split on the progressive side of the aisle. You have to understand, in 2016, a lot of progressives looked at Bernie Sanders, but they didn't support him for the exact same reasons. And there's a very subtle split, but it's getting more and more dramatic. There were some people who saw in Bernie Sanders a vehicle by which they could get the Democratic mainstream to accept more progressive ideas, even if progressive candidates weren't necessarily getting elected. That would be the Cenk Uygur approach. As for Jimmy Dore, people like him were trying to support Bernie Sanders because they wanted the change to happen as fast as possible. They wanted the political revolution that Bernie Sanders represented. They wanted Medicare for all as soon as possible because they believe that there is a crisis in the country that must be solved, and Medicare for all would be, Medicare for all is just one example, but there's a number of policies where they wanted the fight for 15. So they want a $15 minimum wage nationwide. They want things like, free college. They want card check for unions. They want the Green New Deal. That is the approach that is more the Jimmy Dore type of attitude within the Democratic Party than the Cenk Uygur approach. But as the Democrats have adapted since the 2016 election, this type of cooperation between those two approaches is nearing its end, because if Jimmy Dore goes into the 2020 election and the Democrats have nominated somebody who is not progressive, somebody, for example, like Kamala Harris, Jimmy Dore will likely openly say, no, we're not going to support this person, we're going to support a third party. Cenk Uygur would probably support the consensus Democratic candidate, because the priority for TYT, the priority for the corporate left, which TYT is getting closer and closer to, and probably is already, is to defeat Donald Trump. It has not as much to do with promoting progressive policies. So that is really where we're going, and I would say that soon we're going to see a new crop of alternative progressive people. This is going to be the Tulsi Gabbard, Bernie Sanders split. And it's not just Tulsi Gabbard. You have Mike Gravel, who's even more staunch in terms of policies that are to the left than either Gabbard or Jimmy Dore. So those types of progressives are going to be backed by people like Jimmy Dore and Kim Iverson over here. She's rapidly gaining a following. So yeah, progressivism is certainly going through an evolution. I personally, I'm not progressive by any means. I would say I'm probably closer to a conservative. But when you have people who are conservative that only consume right-wing shows, for example, I know people who solely consume talk radio, Rush Limbaugh, or they'll listen to Fox News, they'll listen to things like that. You kind of stay oblivious to what's happening in the broader public. Similarly, you have progressives like that, but I don't think the Jimmy Dore show represents that. I think that they do try to. Uh, actually, you know what? It's tough. It's tough to know. Sometimes I think that Jimmy Dore is ignoring completely what the other side of the aisle is saying, and sometimes I think he is a little more conscious than Uyghur and people like that. But it's hard to know. There's definitely a few people that I've been introduced to in terms of content through Jimmy Dore rather than the Young Turks, which I think is a huge waste of time. For example, Thomas Frank, who is he's basically a liberal progressive writer who's written about the disconnect between the professional liberal class and the working class. He is amazing. If you watch some of his lectures, they're pretty well put together, and they make a lot of sense. Even if you don't believe in Medicare for all or any of that stuff, it's a lot of very high level discussion about what motivates people to vote and why, and what motivates people to support policies and why. So yeah, I think the Jimmy Dore show, looking forward, will be a very interesting thing to watch, and I encourage you to check it out. So that's about it. Please like, share, subscribe, and also subscribe to me on BitChute at Chef Leopard. My other accounts are on Minds at Chef Leopard and Gab at Starscream85. And I'll talk to you later. Enjoy your Sunday. We'll probably see each other again before the end of the day.